Look, I want you to imagine two people. Both of them are 28 years old, both making $65,000 a year. Person A goes to work, does exactly what their boss tells them, follows the established processes, never rocks the boat. They're good at their job. Reliable. Person B, they're constantly asking, why do we do it this way? They're sketching ideas on napkins during lunch. They're combining concepts from totally different fields that have nothing to do with each other. Fast forward 15 years. Person A is making $92,000 a year. A decent 3% annual raise, right on schedule. Person B is making $340,000 a year running a division they invented that didn't even exist when they started. Here's the thing that's going to make you uncomfortable. The difference wasn't intelligence. It wasn't even work ethic. It was how they used their creativity. And, most people have been taught to think about creativity completely backwards when it comes to building wealth. My name is John, and I spend way too much time thinking about why some people break through to serious wealth while others plateau at comfortable but not transformational incomes. If you're someone who's smart, hardworking, doing everything right financially, but still feeling like you're on a treadmill to modest success instead of building real wealth, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Here's what most people don't realize. Creativity isn't just for artists and entrepreneurs. Creativity is literally an investment strategy. And I'm not being metaphorical here. I mean this in the most practical dollars and cents way possible. See, we've been sold this myth that wealth comes from hard work and discipline. And look, those things matter. But a study from Boston Consulting Group analyzed 1,500 companies over a decade and found that companies in the top quartile for innovation generated 2.6 times more shareholder returns than those in the bottom quartile. 2.6 times. That's not a rounding error. That's the difference between comfortable and generational wealth. But here's where it gets really interesting. The same principle applies to individuals, but almost nobody talks about it this way. Robert Sternberg and Todd Lubart developed what they called the investment theory of creativity back in the 1990s. Now, before your eyes glaze over because I mentioned an academic theory, stay with me because this is going to change how you think about making money. The theory says this: creative people are like investors in the stock market. They buy low and sell high in the world of ideas. What does that mean? They pursue ideas that are currently undervalued, ideas that other people are ignoring or dismissing. They develop those ideas. Then, when the ideas become valuable and widely accepted, they move on to the next undervalued idea. Let me give you a concrete example. In 2007, there was this guy named Brian Chesky. He couldn't afford rent. In San Francisco. Instead of just getting a roommate like everyone else, he had this weird idea. What if he rented out air mattresses in his living room to people attending a design conference? Everyone thought this was stupid. Who wants to sleep on a stranger's air mattress? But here's the thing. He was buying low on an undervalued idea, that people would trade some comfort and privacy for affordability and authentic local experiences. He developed that idea into Airbnb. By 2021, Airbnb's market cap hit $100 billion. That's buying low and selling high on creativity. Now you might be thinking, John, that's a nice story, but I'm not going to create the next Airbnb. And you're probably right. But here's what you're missing. This principle scales. It works at every level of wealth building. Most people fail at this for 6 specific reasons. And I'm going to walk through each one because if you can fix even 2 or 3 of these, your earning potential changes dramatically. In investing, buying low means buying when everyone else thinks something is worthless. In creativity, it means pursuing ideas that other people are dismissing or ignoring. But here's the psychological problem. We're wired to seek approval. We want people to think our ideas are good immediately. I saw a study from the University of Pennsylvania that tracked 11,000 business ideas. Ideas that were rated as highly innovative by experts initially had a 58% failure rate. But ideas rated as moderately innovative? Only 32% failure rate. So the market punishes creative thinking in the short term. This is exactly like buying a stock at $12 when everyone says it's going to $5. It feels terrible. Your friends think you're crazy. But if you're right and it goes to $120, that's a 10x return. Most people never get that return because they can't handle the discomfort of buying low. Look, here's the hard truth. You can't buy low and immediately sell high. There's a development period. You have to invest time, energy, sometimes money, into developing the undervalued idea before it becomes valuable. Let me give you a mathematical example. Let's say you have an idea for a more efficient way to do something at your company. The traditional path is to work 40 hours a week doing things the old way, making $75,000 a year. The creative investment path is to work 40 hours a week at your regular job, then invest 10 hours a week for 6 months developing your idea, building a prototype, gathering data, testing it. That's 260 hours of investment. At your current hourly rate, that's about $9,375 worth of your time. Most people won't make that investment because they can't see the immediate return. But if your idea leads to a promotion that bumps you to $95,000 a year, that's an extra $20,000 annually. Your 260-hour investment just generated a 213% annual return. And that compounds every single year. This is huge. You know how in investing, the biggest returns come from holding a winning position long enough? Same thing with creative ideas. Most people have a good idea, see some initial success, and then just stop. They cash out too early. I watched this happen with a guy I used to work with. He created a better onboarding process for new hires. It worked great. The company loved it. He got a $5,000 bonus. And then he went back to his regular job, feeling pretty good about himself. Here's what he didn't do. He didn't expand that idea to other departments. He didn't write a white paper about it and speak at industry conferences. He didn't use it as leverage to move into a director role. He sold at $5,000 when he could have sold at $50,000 or $500,000 in lifetime career value. This is where it gets uncomfortable because it means most people need to learn more. Not just about their field, but about multiple fields. The investment theory says you need 6 types of knowledge to be creative: domain knowledge, procedural knowledge, contextual knowledge, tacit knowledge, declarative knowledge, and integrative knowledge. That sounds complicated, but here's what it means in practice. The most valuable creative insights come from combining knowledge from different domains. There's research from Northwestern University that analyzed 17.9 million scientific papers. The highest impact papers, the ones that generated the most citations and breakthrough discoveries, came from teams that combined expertise from distant fields. A practical example. Someone who understands both psychology and marketing can create advertising that's worth 10x what someone who only knows marketing can create. Someone who understands both technology and healthcare can identify opportunities that neither pure technologists nor pure healthcare professionals see. The average millionaire reads 1 nonfiction book per month according to Thomas Corley's research. But here's the thing most people miss. They're not reading books in their field. They're reading broadly to build integrative knowledge. Creative thinking requires holding contradictory ideas in your head at the same time. It requires psychological discomfort. Most people hate this feeling so much that they'll abandon creative thinking just to resolve the tension. Here's an example. Let's say you work in finance, and you have this idea that your company should adopt a technology solution that would automate 40% of what your department does. The contradictory ideas you have to hold are, this will make the company more efficient, which is good for you long term. This might eliminate jobs, possibly including yours, which is scary. This could position you as a strategic thinker, which is good. And this might make you look like you're threatening colleagues, which is bad. Most people can't handle this cognitive conflict, so they just don't pursue the creative idea. They stick with the safe path, and they wonder why they're stuck at $85,000 a year while someone else is making $250,000. The investment theory identifies 3 thinking styles that matter for creativity: legislative, executive, and judicial. Most people default to executive thinking. They're great at implementing other people's ideas. But legislative thinkers create their own rules and structures, and judicial thinkers evaluate and critique existing approaches. Here's the financial impact. Executive thinkers tend to max out at senior individual contributor or middle management roles. We're talking $90,000 to $150,000 in most industries. Legislative thinkers end up in senior leadership or entrepreneurship, $200,000 to millions. Judicial thinkers often end up in consulting or strategic roles, $150,000 to $400,000 plus. The good news? Thinking styles can be developed. The bad news? Most people never try because they don't realize this is what's limiting their income. Okay, look, I know I just dumped a lot on you. Let's make this practical. How do you actually use the investment theory of creativity to build wealth? Every single week, ask yourself, what problem are people in my industry complaining about but not actually solving? Those complaints are undervalued ideas trading at $2 when they should be worth $50. I'll give you a real example from my own life. A few years ago, everyone in my industry was complaining about how hard it was to track project profitability in real time. Everyone complained. Nobody did anything. I spent 3 months building a custom dashboard that solved this problem. That dashboard led to a consulting side business that generated an extra $47,000 in its first year. I bought low on an idea everyone else was ignoring. Here's the formula I use. Take 10 to 15% of your productive time and invest it in developing undervalued ideas. If you work 50 hours a week, that's 5 to 7.5 hours for creative investment. Now here's what most people don't realize. You can't do this with leftover energy. You have to schedule it. I block out 6 to 7:30 a.m. on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. That's my creative investment time. It's non-negotiable. In a year, that's 312 hours. At my effective hourly rate, that's about $15,600 worth of time invested. But here's where the math gets interesting. If that creative investment generates even one good idea per year, that increases my income by $25,000, that's a 160% annual return. And it compounds because each idea builds on the previous ones. This is where persistence matters. Most people give up after 1 or 2 attempts. But research from UC Davis found that creative breakthroughs typically require an average of 3 to 5 iterations before the idea becomes clearly valuable to others. Let me translate that to money. If you give up after iteration 1 or 2, you've invested the time but gotten 0 return. You've lost money. But if you push through to iteration 3, 4, or 5, suddenly the idea clicks, and the return materializes. I've seen this pattern over and over. Someone has a good idea for a new product, feature. First version, people are confused. Second version, people say, interesting but not quite. Third version, people say, oh, now I get it, but here's what's missing. Fourth version, people start actually using it. Fifth version, it becomes essential and people wonder how they lived without it. Each iteration might take 20, 40 hours. Most people quit at iteration 2, having invested maybe 60 hours with nothing to show for it. The people who make it to iteration 5 invest 150 hours and generate returns that dwarf that investment. Once your creative idea becomes obviously valuable, you need to extract maximum value from it. This means documenting it so others can use it, which creates leverage, teaching it to others, which establishes expertise, and using it as a platform for the next creative investment, which compounds returns. Here's a specific example. Let's say you develop a creative solution that saves your company $100,000 a year. The low-return move is to accept a $10,000 bonus and move on. The high-return move is use it to negotiate a $20,000 raise, which is 2x better, write a case study and speak at industry conferences, which builds reputation. Use that reputation to land consulting gigs worth $30,000 a year, which is an additional income stream, and leverage all of this to move to a director role at a new company with a $40,000 salary increase. Same creative idea, but instead of generating $10,000 one time, it generates $90,000 in year 1 and compounds from there. That's selling high. This is where wealth actually gets built. You don't just use creativity once, you make it a system. Each cycle, you buy low on bigger ideas, you invest more resources, you sell at higher prices. Year 1 small idea, 100 hours invested, $15,000 return. Year 2 bigger idea, 150 hours invested, $35,000 return. Year 3 even bigger idea, 200 hours invested, $75,000 return. Year 4 major idea, 250 hours invested, $150,000 return. Notice how the hours increase slower than the returns? That's because you're getting better at the process, and you're building on previous successes. This is how people go from $75,000 a year to $300,000 a year in a decade. It's not one big break. It's a systematic approach to creative investment. Now, here's the thing that separates people who actually do this from people who just think it sounds nice. You have to fundamentally change how you think about your career and your income. Most people think of their job as trading time for money. You work 40 hours, you get paid for 40 hours. That's a linear relationship. Your income has a ceiling determined by how many hours you can work and what your hourly rate is. Creative investment thinking is different. You think of your job as a platform for deploying creative capital. Some of your hours are spent maintaining your baseline income, but the most valuable hours are spent generating asymmetric returns through creative problem solving. Let me make this concrete with actual math. Traditional thinking is 2,000 work hours per year at $50 an hour equals $100,000 per year with a maximum upside of working more hours or negotiating to $60 an hour and a realistic ceiling of $120,000 per year. Creative investment thinking is 1,700 hours maintaining baseline at $50 an hour, which equals $85,000 per year, plus 300 hours on creative investment generating 3x to 10x return, which equals $45,000 to $150,000 per year, for a realistic range of $130,000 to $235,000 per year. And those creative investments compound year over year. The math is just better, but it requires psychological courage to waste 300 hours on ideas that might not work. Now you might be thinking, John, this sounds great in theory, but I'm not a creative person. Okay, here's the hard truth. That's a belief, not a fact. Research from Cornell University found that creative ability is only about 22% heritable. The rest is learned and environmental. You're not creative. You've just never systematically invested in developing creativity as a skill. It's like saying, I'm not a weightlifting person when you've never trained. Yeah, you can't lift 300 pounds right now. But if you trained consistently for a year, you'd be shocked at what you could lift. Or you might be thinking, I don't have time for this. Look, I get it. You're busy. But here's the question. Are you too busy to increase your income by $30,000, $50,000, or $100,000? Because that's what we're talking about. Here's what I tell people. You don't need to find new time. You need to reallocate existing time. The average American spends 2 to 3 hours per day on social media according to Pew Research. I'm not saying cut it all out, but what if you reallocated just 1 hour per day to creative investment? That's 365 hours per year. That's enough to develop 2 to 3 significant creative projects that could each increase your income by $20,000 to $40,000. The math question is simple. Is scrolling Instagram worth more than $20,000 to you? If yes, keep scrolling. If no, reallocate the time. Here's where it gets really interesting, and this is going to sound backwards. The less competitive you are about small wins, the more wealth you'll build. What do I mean by that? Most people are constantly competing for visible, immediate wins. They want the promotion this quarter. They want recognition for every project. They want to beat their colleagues on every metric. But creative investment requires you to sometimes look like you're falling behind. You're investing hours in projects that might not pay off for months or years. You're pursuing ideas that other people think are weird. You're buying low when everyone else thinks you should be buying high. There's a study from Stanford that tracked MBA graduates for 20 years. The ones who were most focused on short-term competitive wins like promotions, titles, and visible achievements had median incomes around $185,000 after 20 years. The ones who were focused on long-term value creation through creative problem-solving had median incomes over $400,000. More than double. Why? Because short-term competition forces you to play the same game as everyone else. You're fighting for a slice of a fixed pie. Creative investment means you're creating new pies. And when you create the pie, you get a much bigger slice. All right, let's make this actionable. If you want to start using the investment theory of creativity to build wealth, here's exactly what to do this week. Monday, spend 30 minutes identifying 3 problems in your industry that everyone complains about but nobody is solving. Write them down. These are potentially undervalued ideas. Tuesday, pick the problem that you have the most knowledge about and the most interest in solving. Spend 1 hour researching. Has anyone tried to solve this before? What happened? And why didn't it work? Or why hasn't it been adopted? Wednesday, spend 1 hour sketching out a potential solution. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be good. You're buying low, remember? The idea is undervalued right now. That's the point. Thursday, identify what resources you need to develop this idea. Time? Knowledge? Money? Tools? Make a list. Then calculate if I invest these resources and this works. What's the potential return? If the return is at least 3x the investment, continue. If not, go back to your list of problems and pick a different one. Friday, block out specific time in your calendar for the next 4 weeks to work on developing this idea. Minimum 2 hours per week. These blocks are as important as client meetings. Treat them that way. On the weekend, read 1 book or take 1 online course that gives you knowledge from outside your primary field. This builds the integrative knowledge you need to spot connections others miss. Do this for 3 months. At the end of 3 months, you should have at least 1 developed idea that you can test. If it works, you've just created a new income stream or positioned yourself for a significant raise or promotion. If it doesn't work, you've learned something valuable about creative investment that makes your next attempt higher probability. Look, here's what this is really about. Most people are playing a game where the rules are set by someone else. You go to school, get a degree, get a job, work hard, get raises, retire. That path works. You'll probably end up comfortable. You'll probably hit a household income of $100,000 to $150,000 if you're good at your job and stay employed. But you won't build serious wealth. You won't have the kind of money that changes your family's trajectory for generations. You won't have real freedom. The people who build real wealth, we're talking multiple millions in net worth, not just a nice retirement account, are the people who consistently buy low on undervalued ideas and sell high when those ideas become obviously valuable. And here's the thing that should make you simultaneously uncomfortable and excited. This opportunity is available to you right now. You don't need to quit your job. You don't need to start a company. You don't need to take huge risks. You just need to start thinking about creativity as an investment strategy and actually deploy capital, your time, your energy, your attention into undervalued ideas. I'm going to leave you with one final thought. There's a concept in investing called opportunity cost. It's the cost of not taking an action. If you have $10,000 and you keep it in a savings account earning 0.5%, instead of investing it at 8% average annual returns, the opportunity cost over 30 years is about $87,000. You lost $87,000 by choosing the safe, comfortable option. The same thing applies to creative investment. Every year you spend just executing other people's ideas instead of developing your own, you're paying an opportunity cost. For most people, based on the research I've shared today, that opportunity cost is somewhere between $30,000 and $100,000 per year. Over a career, We're talking millions of dollars in lost potential income. Now, maybe that's fine with you. Maybe you value comfort over potential wealth. That's a legitimate choice. But you should make that choice consciously, understanding what you're giving up. Or maybe, and this is what I'm hoping for, maybe you're ready to start thinking about creativity differently. Maybe you're ready to buy low on some undervalued ideas. Maybe you're ready to make the investment that could 10x your income over the next decade. If that's you, start today. Not tomorrow. Today. Identify one undervalued idea and invest the first hour in developing it. That's all it takes to begin. If this helped you think differently about creativity and wealth, hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe if you want more content about the intersection of psychology and money. And drop a comment telling me, what's one undervalued idea in your field that you're going to buy low on? I'll see you in the next one.